Sure.
When you harvest, why don't you remove those branches?
Well, because if we remove the branches, we shall be affecting our tree.
Okay.
Then we need to preserve the tree in better conditions so that we can
Because
continue.
the way I can see like this one,
Mm.
you harvested but still leave it there.
Yeah, but soon it will drop by itself. We leave the natural course to take place.
Okay.
We don't panic to cut them off immediately. Unless we see if it is affected by any pesticide, then we can come and remove it.
Okay.
Yes. But if not, we leave it and follow by itself.
By itself.
Yes.
There are two types of coffee, Robusta and Arabic. Robusta grows in low altitude areas and Arabic in high altitude areas. Depending on the variety, it will take approximately 3 to 4 years for the newly planted coffee trees to bear fruit. The fruit, called the coffee cherry, turns to bright deep red when it is ripe and ready to be harvested. There is typically one major harvest a year. In countries where there are 2 flowerings annually, there is a main and a secondary crop. In most countries, the crop is picked by hand in a labor-intensive and difficult process, though in places where the landscape is relatively flat and the coffee fields immense, the process has been mechanized. Whether by hand or by machine, all coffee is harvested in 1 or 2 ways. And at maturity, harvest only the red ripe cherry. Once the coffee has been picked, processing must begin as quickly as possible on tap-out lines, or raised platforms, or cemented floors to preserve its good quality and prevent fruit spoilage. Depending on location and local resources, coffee is processed in 1 or 2 ways. That's the dry and wet method, as our expert from Uganda Coffee Development Authority explains.
Welcome, it's Farm Smart Show again here at Smart24 TV. We are looking at coffee in general. My name is Kuishi Takahaman, and this time around we are at the Uganda Coffee Development Authority. You want to see the process of how we get our coffee from the farm to the cup. We are going to be looking at value addition, a little bit of market, and what you need to do as a coffee processor. With me, I have an expert from the Coffee Development Authority who is going to be leading us and taking us through the entire process.
My name is Joseph Byamukama. I'm the Quality Assurance Officer with Uganda Coffee Development Authority. Yes.
Yes, we have had Uganda Coffee Development Authority. Tell us a bit about it.
Uganda Coffee Development Authority is a government agency mandated to oversee the quality of coffee along the value chain, including coffee consumption promotion, productivity improvement, and enhancing production of the coffee for an all-inclusiveness of our stakeholders. Yeah.
So what is your relationship with the farmers?
I must say our relationship with farmers is very, very strong because we know this crop, the coffee we are talking about, the farmers are the producers of this crop that we are talking about. So we work hand in hand with them. They hand over this crop to us, and then we take on from there. So farmers are part of our key stakeholders when it comes to the coffee subsector.
Yes, so all of you out there would like to know. So take us through the process from the seed to processing. Take us through.
Thank you so much. What I'm going to demonstrate for us here is the secondary coffee processing, basically. So like I said, this coffee is handed to us from the farmer in this form. As you can see, the red ripe cherries, it's what we encourage them to harvest. Because it is this that gives us the coffee that we really desire in a cup. Okay? So, after harvesting the coffee, we have 2 processing methods. There is the natural and then the washed. So the natural is where you dry your coffee on the direct sunlight or using solar dryers. From these coffee cherries to what we call dry coffee cherries, what other people call chiboko. There's also another method where the freshly harvested red cherries are pulped to give what we call parchment. Now this is the washing method where we ferment the coffee. This would be the dry or the natural coffee processing method. So we all know that quality in is actually the same as quality out. So if you don't have good quality beans or cherries coming into the system, you don't expect to get a very good quality product which is value added for consumption. So like I said, we make sure that what the farmer harvests is at least 90% red ripe cherries in this color or in this form. So after drying that coffee for 5 to almost like a week, we get what we call the dry coffee cherries, which we call the chiboko. So after this, now this coffee, the cherries are taken to a primary hulling station. We have very many across the country, and I should mention that coffee is grown in a bigger part of this country. Now, because we have Robusta and Arabica, basically, Arabica tends to grow in mountainous or hilly areas, higher altitudes. So when I talk of higher altitudes, we are talking of areas like Mount Rwenzori. Of course, the Rwenzori region, it includes over the 10 districts of Rwenzori. You talk of Mount Elgon, Kugiso sub-region. You talk of Paida in the West Nile. You talk of some parts of Rukunjiri and southwestern parts of Kabare and Kisoro. Uganda is the birthplace for Robusta coffee, and around 70% of our coffee that we produce and export is Robusta. And then the other 30% is what is Arabica. Yes, so Robusta, for it grows on lower altitudes. Talk of areas like central region here, talk of southwestern districts, talk of western area, side of Mubende, Kasanda, all that is Robusta. Talk of Busoga sub-region, that is all Robusta. Yes. So, after harvesting our coffee cherries from the farm, we are going to first describe the natural or the dry processing method, where I dry this coffee on a raised floor or a platform or on a tarpaulin. We don't want this coffee to make ground with the soil because it is going to be tainted and then it affects the quality of the coffee. Because our mandate is to oversee and promote the quality of coffee along the value chain. So we encourage our farmers and we really encourage them to dry the coffee on either a raised platform or a tarpaulin such that it does not get into direct contact with the soil. Because as we are going to see, when you dry it, let's say on the soil, or if you do any other malpractice, it will report you. The coffee reports you. It tells me what actually happened to it while it was being handled along the value chain. So I dry my red cherries into what we call chiboko, the dry coffee cherries. After drying these, you take them to a primary hulling station. We have very many of them across the country, and they are operated by the private sector.
Milling the beans before being exported, they go through processes like hulling machinery, which removes the parchment layer or endocap from wet processed coffee. Polishing, which is an optional process where any silver skin that remains on the beans after hulling is removed by machine.
When he hulls, or whoever hulls that coffee at the station, it gives us what we call fair average quality. Some people call it clean, others call it kase. But for us, in our technical terms, we call it fair average quality. It is fair average quality because it is coffee of different sizes. It is coffee with still some bit of the defects. which we shall remove as we proceed along the value chain. Because now, as we are talking, this is at the primary processing level. So after getting your fair average quality, as you can see, the coffees are not of the same appearance. They don't have the same size, as you can see. And also, they still have some bit of a few of the defects, including the husks. Of course, husks were from this as we are processing. But as we go along the value chain, we are going to see where do we separate and have a uniform coffee that gives us a uniform cup.
And finally, grading and sorting is done by size and weight, and the beans are also reviewed for color flaws or other imperfections.
That coffee, after the hulling station, which is primary processing, it proceeds to the secondary processing stage. Now, the secondary processing stage, now we are talking of coffee grading, and the resultant product of the coffee grading is what we export, or what we call the green coffee beans. That is our term. We call them the green coffee beans. So for Robusta, we have graders in those coffee grading facilities, okay? And these are also, I must mention and stress it out, that they are private sector operated, okay? Ours is to facilitate the trade, is to facilitate the industry by guiding with the standards and ensuring that whatever leaves the country, whatever is consumed here locally, meets the required standard, so as to fetch the good price that our farmer or our stakeholders deserve. So that coffee is graded into different grades. Now, I must mention to you that for me to come up with a grade, let's say screen 18, you can clearly tell that screen 18 is of the bigger size in terms of the bean size compared to the screen 12. These are all Robustas, but they are different. How do they become different? Because at the export grading facility, which is at secondary processing level, those machines are arranged in a way that they have different sieves to keep separating coffee according to their different size and according to their different densities and according to their appearance.
Beans are sized by being processed through a series of screens and also sorted pneumatically using an air jet to separate heavy from light beans. And finally, defective beans are removed either by hand or by machinery.
For coffee which is now like this, screen 18, it is coffee. During the processing, 92% of it was retained along on this mesh. And then the smaller beans would go through, okay? For me to come up with screen 15, it means they go through 18, they go through 16, and those coffee beans are retained on screen 15. Now, for the coffee to pass as screen 15 is one of our grades, and even 18 for Robusta. So when I talk screen 15, those are the grades that we handle as Uganda, and those are the grades that we do export, okay? So screen 15, it means all that coffee, over 90% of it was retained on this screen. It goes on and on and on up to screen 12, as you can see. So why do we grade that coffee into their different grades? We grade it because at value addition, when you're roasting your coffee, you want this coffee to be uniform. If it is totally different in terms of the sizes, some smaller beans like screen, let's say 12, will get roasted already before the screen 18. And that would make sure that you would not come up with a consistent product in terms of quality. And besides that, we also look at the markets. What do the markets want? And we process the coffee in accordance to those grades. If our customer, whoever is importing the coffee, says, I want screen 18, we shall process for them 18 and give it to them. Of course, different grades come with their different prices attached. For instance, a screen 18 is of superior quality compared to screen 15, compared to screen 12. because a bigger bean is an indication that the farmer did the right agronomic practices and fed their coffee very well, in addition to other factors. Okay, so it does not necessarily mean that screen 12 means the smaller bean that the farmer did not really take good care of there. We may also look at the age of the trees, we may look at other agronomic factors, but ideally it means this coffee bean or cherry really fed very well. Yeah, maybe the climate also was good, and the tree was really fed very well to give us the good big coffee bean. So that is now the natural coffee processing for Robusta. But still with the Robusta, we also do the washed, what we call the washed processing, or the wet processing, where I said after harvesting this, our farmers there have what we call small machines. They are called pulpers, okay, or pulping stations or washing stations for other companies. So this coffee, instead of drying it, unlike this where we dry it on the direct sunlight or using a solar dryer, this we pulp it and remove this, the top cover, this red cherry, the coating, and we get what we call parchment. But we get parchment after we first keep it in an enclosed vessel for at most 72 hours. Now, fermenting coffee, you're not making alcohol per se, but you're allowing this coffee, because this coffee, it has some sugars. When you remove this, okay, it has some sugars. So these sugars, you are allowing them time to ferment and give you the desirable attributes in your coffee. And even when it comes to the acidity, as we are going to see moving forward. So after 72 hours, we wash that coffee, okay, at a washing station, and dry it also the same way we dry this. On a raised platform, you don't want this coffee to get in touch with the ground. We don't want it to be overheated, because it will develop what we call ochratoxin A, which is not good in our coffee. It poses a food safety threat. And after this, we mill the coffee. Now that is for wet processing. We mill and we remove the parchment and get what we call now the green coffee beans, like this. Which coffee for Robusta is this, okay? So we will do wash our Robusta, and even we have a naturally processed Robusta, the same way we have naturally processed Arabica and also wet processed Arabica coffees. So the process is the same. After getting my parchment, I'm going to mill it the same way I milled my chiboko, and I get what I call FHU, the same way I did with Robusta. Now that FHU, like we said, that coffee is of different sizes, so we shall sort it according to their densities, according to their sizes, the bean size, like I showed you, and according to the defects that they be having by sorting them out. And then I come up with a coffee which I call naturally processed Arabica, which we call Druga. Druga is one of our grades that we also produce as Uganda. Okay. Then we have also the Ugas. Those are the washed Uganda Arabica, like this. And you can clearly tell there is a distinction in terms of the appearance of these coffee beans, and even in their cup, they are also different. But because, yes, in the size, even in the appearance, but for us, as a producing country, as a coffee growing region, we produce what our farmers, what our buyers need. But also, it's not about producing what they need. We also go ahead and make sure we create markets for our produce that we give, that we produce as a country. The two different, even if it is only Arabica, if it is naturally processed, and the one which is washed or wet processed, when you test, as you're going to see along the value chain, at the tail end of the value chain for consumption, those coffees, you can easily tell it's Arabica, but they have their distinctive kind of attributes. And actually, those are the attributes that the buyer, that the customer, or the consumer is looking out for. So for us, we listen to them and know what they want. Then we come this side and we process. There is a customer who will tell you that Robusta is my best. I will just give an example. For instance, the Arab world. Robusta is their coffee. Okay? When you go to maybe Europe, the Western world, for them it could be they are asking for Robusta. So for us, all this coffee is the best, depending on what you're looking out for. And for us, we are honest. We tell you exactly what are the attributes in this coffee. Are you looking out for coffees from Uganda that are nutty, that have a chocolate taste? Okay, look no further than Robusta. Are you looking for coffees that have the spices? Are you looking for the coffee that has the dried tropical fruit notes? Are you looking for coffee with lemon acidity? Look no further than washed Uganda Arabica coffee. So for us, we listen from what the client is saying, and then we say, this is the coffee for you. Given also the amount of money, the price that you have for the coffee. Yes, sir.
The milled beans, now referred to as green coffee, are loaded onto ships in either jute or sisal bags loaded in shipping containers or bulk shipped inside plastic-lined containers.
So after here, this coffee in their different grades, okay, and that's how actually this coffee is marketed, okay, to whoever is going to buy or to the importing countries. So this coffee is now going to be bagged in what we call gunny bags. Now, we need to stress out that this coffee, it's a beverage, it's a food. So the way we handle it is the same way we handle any other food. So we follow the good hygienic code of conduct, ensuring that food safety requirements are in place to ensure and guarantee the quality and also the safety of the product. So this coffee is packaged in what we call gunny bags. Those gunny bags are also food grade. They are regarded as safe, and also they are food grade category. If we don't use gunny bags, there are also PP bags they use for the bulk liners when the coffee is being stuffed in the container. It is also food grade. And it is this coffee, any grade, that is now shipped to the country of destination. I should stress out and mention that for our green coffee beans, Europe takes around 63% of that coffee. But also in Africa, most of our Robustas, also Sudan, northern the Khartoum, Sudan, buys our coffee. Yeah, but also we export all our coffee all over the world, including our neighbors. They buy coffee, we export. For us, if you give us a price, we export to you. After coffee has been now processed into the various grades, screen 12, 15, and 18 for Robusta, or even washed Robusta, now this coffee, we are at the tail end. For Arabica, of course, these are the different grades: the honey processed, the washed Uganda Arabica, grade A. All these coffees, we don't mix them. I need to stress that out. These coffees are also sold to the buyer in a single grade. We can't mix them up. That would be adulteration. And according to our National Coffee Act, the one of 2021, prohibits, actually it's an offense to find someone mixing the two coffees, Robusta and Arabica. It is adulteration. So, but the buyer out there who's going to roast that coffee, he knows the recipes he's going to make for his customers. Because we know in business, customer is the boss, the client is the boss. So if he says, I want a blend, the other buyer who's across the country will say, maybe I need to get, let's say, maybe 45% of my screen 18, and I also add maybe like 20% of the honey processed coffee. That is his to do. Yes, but for us, we export it the way it is. So after that coffee, now we are done with a secondary level of coffee processing. So we would hand over now to another level of processing, which we call tertiary. So if I'm to recap, our farmer hands over to what we call the primary. That is where we are hurrying to get the cassette or the FAQ. Now that cassette or FAQ is passed on to another level, which we call secondary processing level, where we are grading coffee in accordance to their different grades, exportable grades. And after that, after me I've achieved this, I bag this coffee into their different packaging materials, and it's handed over to the next level of processing, which we call tertiary. Now tertiary is the one where we do the roasting. And I should stress this out, that value addition starts from the farm. The same way we have an old adage that goes quality in, quality out, garbage in, garbage out. You would not expect to get a quality coffee from this when the coffees coming from the farm are not of good quality, when the coffees have been mishandled, when the coffees have been heaped while drying. So the next step would be the tertiary processing level, which is roasting of the coffee to get our roasted coffee beans.